When it comes to spiritual awakening, can you talk about maybe your own experience of spiritual awakening and what are some of the signs and symptoms, how it affects you physically, emotionally, and psychologically?
Well, your spiritual awakening is your shift in consciousness. There has to be a change of terms of how you think. I remember the first time I had a shift in consciousness, and I think, about 20 years old. I was bordering, because I grew up Catholic. So I was bordering the Catholic teachings, and I was just entering the metaphysics because I was in college in my undergrad, and I'm trying to figure my life out. Someone said to me, I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were giving me all these rules and regulations and what you can do and can't do and this, that, and the other. And I never will forget this experience. I was walking down the street. I was angry when I left this person, and I said, God, why do I need you? If you're going to punish me, beat me down, and do all these other different things, I don't need you. I can go out in the streets and get beat down and, ran over by a truck or whatever. What do I need you for? So that was my call for help because I was young. I didn't understand, but it has always been a sense of spirituality in my presence. I just didn't know what it was until I really got into the metaphysical teachings. The metaphysical teachings is about the spirit, mind, and body. It is the study of the spirit, mind, and body. So now you're going into the scientific side of your existence. I'm like, so what do I need this for? And so then I was a waitress at this little small restaurant. And so this cab driver came in every morning. He comes in and gets breakfast. And he said to me, Dionne, I want you to go to this church. He didn't ask me to come with him. He just said, I think you would benefit well by going to this church, which was called Christ Universal Temple, and was a female minister. Very dynamic female minister. She was the first minister in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois to build a megachurch. And so, of course, she teaches prosperity and how to live good and all those different things. And so I'm going to this church. And when I first went there, I didn't understand a thing that she was talking about. Okay. But because I continued to go back, and I always sat in the back of the church, and everybody was dressed up well, and I was on the train getting there, and 20 years old, you're not dressing like, well, back in my time, you're not dressing like they dressing today, okay? So I'm just this little poverty little girl trying to figure out my life, and I needed food that was different from what I was getting through the Catholic Church, and I needed food that was different from the Baptist church. I couldn't resonate with those teachings, but I didn't know what I was seeking. So I finally went to this church that this gentleman had told me to go to. And in the beginning, I didn't understand, but as I continued to go, my awakening occurred again. Your awakening is your understanding of knowledge so that you are able to make the shifts that you need to make in your life in order for you to discover, to develop, and to grow your life. So for me, it was the metaphysics. Then I went into Buddhism. I went into Hinduism. I went into Judaism. I went into all the isms, okay? Studying. I kind of think of myself as a spiritual drive-by student. I don't stay long enough. I don't plant myself. I stayed long enough for me to get an understanding. And what I discovered is that through all religions, there are common threads. We just have to figure out what resonates with our inner self to help us better connect with our higher power, with our overself or oversoul, so that then we can get on the path of developing and discovering our life. but it is the awareness of knowing that the presence is there. We must be aware that the higher self or the over self is there, because so many of us still look up to the sky when we should look within. Because your universe is inside of you. The same universe that is in the sky is also inside of you. Every element, every quality, every attribute is within you. But we have to take the time to get to know it. And I like to make the reference that, you know, when you meet somebody and you really like this person, you want to get to know everything about them, and you want to do for them, and you want to make them happy. Well, we should do that for ourselves. We should want to get to know ourselves on the inside. We should want to make ourselves happy on the inside. If we do that for ourselves, and I have that in my book, because my book is about caretakers taking care of other people, but we don't take care of ourselves. So if we would treat ourselves like we treat this new man that we just met, then we can find fulfillment.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's also where integrity comes from, right? Because when we truly good to ourselves, then we can give to others without the need to take. Otherwise, it becomes a transaction or even manipulation.
Yeah.
But we can only give when our cup is full.
Yeah. And here's the other piece. When we give, we should not fear that someone is going to take from us or we are going to lose. Because we have more than enough on this planet. We will not consume everything on this planet. That's how vast the creation was. Just like the universe. As above, so below. Simply means that our life is to reflect the same life of creation in the universe. But we don't know how to do that if we don't apply ourselves to study and practice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I always say step outside of yourself. Step outside of the human side of you, the physical side of you, the intellectual or the logic side of you. And trust your intuition. Trust is a very, very hard thing to do because we have become so fear-oriented. And trust is where the flow is. Everything flows when you trust. It's just like going down, a whitewater raft, and you're going downward and you have your arms out and you're trusting that ride. You're trusting the process. You're not concerned. You like the twists and the turns and all of the advantages and activities and things that go into that experience. You're trusting that you have no fear. That's where we have to be. Knowing that where you land is where you're supposed to be at that time, place, and space in that moment.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're concerned about the outcome. But what if? What if I get stuck on a log? What if the cliff runs over and I drop into the Niagara Falls? You get to that place and you drop. What if? We can't be concerned about things that we can't see in the physical realm. That's not what this is about. That's why we have to close the gap to the polarity that we create in our life, because there's only oneness. And the moment the consciousness that is your awakening. And the moment the consciousness understands that is your awakening. You have now shifted your consciousness, your understanding to a different level of awareness that is not in alignment with the world. Here is where the magic or the manifestation occurs. where we tap into the presence of our spiritual awakening. That is, the spiritual awakening is the knowledge of the I am presence. Now, we use the word I am every day, probably 2, 3, 4, 500 times a day. But what is the adjective behind the I am? I is the subject. Am is my verb. That is my present. Am is present. But what are we putting behind that? Some of us are putting a lot of negative words behind I am. That adjective creates lack, limitation, suffering, unhappiness, trauma, pain, sickness, the mental issues, all kind of stuff. But if we are in our spiritual awakening space, then we're going to use our I am more positively. I am happy. I am joy. You hear people say, girl, how you doing today? Girl, I am sick. I'm disgusted. I am all of those negative adjectives behind I am. But if we use I am in a more positive, now we are elevating the vibration and the frequency of our energy so that we can continually spiral upward and upward and upward.
Yeah. I really like what you said about trusting your intuition. And intuition is a feminine trait. And trust is following your heart. It's a feminine trait. And I can understand why a lot of people kind of stay in their mind so much, because in our society, even now, we value masculine traits so much, and we don't see feminine traits as important, but it's equally important as masculine traits. And all of these come down generational influences. A child is shaped and programmed by their parents' programming. And how much fear a child has depends on how they were treated by their parents. And if they grow up to be adults and they never address the issue, that they stay as a very fearful adult. So a lot has to do with confronting childhood and heal from them.
Yes, and a lot of those traumas begin in the womb.
Yeah.
And some of us have to go back to our mothers or grandmothers and have conversations about how did they feel when you was carrying me? What were you going through when you were carrying me in the womb? When we look at our grandparents and our great-grandparents and our forefathers, the women then did not have an opportunity to think about, oh, I have some goals. I have dreams. I want to do this. I don't want to, clean the clothes on the scrub board. I want to bake a cake and sell them. They had dreams, but they could not express their dreams. They couldn't move them forward because of the time, because of the understanding, because of the culture. However, those dreams that was trapped in the womb of that mother passed to that child. That limitation energy, that fear energy, that being silent energy passed on into the DNA of that child. And then that child carries that and find that they are mimicking the same thing as their mom. My mother was an extreme disciplinarian, very stoic. And my mother used to always tell me, you're going to be just like me when you grow up. And I used to say, I'm just like her. I am just like her. I'm a disciplinarian. I'm very focused. I don't do this well. I need to do this sometimes. I don't do this too good, but I'm laser in, right? So we have to sometimes, and unfortunately, men also have to do this, but they don't realize that they need to do this, that they need to go back and find the womb stories. Because that also is an awakening. You see, awakening is so many different things because it all depends upon where you are along the spiral journey and what it is that you need to unfold that has been hidden. And once we receive that, then we come into the realization of the light. We come into the illumination of ourselves, that we are the light. And so now, based on what we believe and how we implemented determines how bright, what degree that light is within us. It can be dim. It can be a blinding light. But the one thing the light does for us, it helps us to see the limitations of our life. What do we need to work on? What are the fears, the doubts, the challenges the traumas that we have experienced in our life? And we need to put light around it. Light simply means I need to expose it so that I can get the clear understanding of why I'm fearful. Why am I doubtful? Why did I allow myself to be traumatized? Who did I let come into my space to take up residency, to control me? We have to face those dark questions that we don't want to face. Yes, it's painful. Yes, I have done some dumb things in my lifetime, okay? Made the wrong choices, decisions without the wrong path. Yes, I have, okay? That is why I am able to sit here today and have this conversation, because it was through my error where I learned my correctiveness. So our awakening leads to our self-realization of who we are and what we need to do with ourselves, about ourselves.